Ever feel like you see the tip of the iceberg when it comes to law enforcement? Like
Yeah.
what's really going on beneath the surface?
Mm-hmm.
Well, today we're cracking the case on what it takes to be a police officer. And no, we don't need a warrant for this intel. We're going deep with RoleCatcher's career resources.
Yeah.
They're basically like the ultimate cheat sheet for understanding this line of work.
Right.
And the best part is they just updated everything, so this is fresh intel.
It's true. What I find so fascinating is how much the perception of policing is changing, even just in the last few years. Like RoleCatcher really emphasizes the problem-solving aspect. And the community impact side of things, it's not just lights and sirens like you see on TV.
Right. And speaking of things you don't see on TV, one stat that really blew my mind was the variety of tasks police officers actually handle.
Oh, tell me about it.
We're talking everything from directing traffic to like mediating neighborhood disputes. It's not all high-speed chases and, busting down doors.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a key takeaway here, how much law enforcement is evolving. It's less about just reacting after a crime happens and more about proactively addressing, like, the root causes. Think community policing programs, youth outreach.
Yeah.
They even talk about analyzing crime data to, like, predict where problems might occur, almost like pre-crime units or something.
Hold up, pre-crime units. Are you telling me they're using data to predict crime? Like in Minority Report. That's both really cool and also kind of creepy at the same time.
Yeah.
But back to the day-to-day for a second. You mentioned this whole range of situations that officers encounter.
Yeah.
So give us the rundown. Like, what does that actually look like on a typical day?
Well, on any given day, an officer might be handling traffic stops, responding to accidents, domestic calls. You name it, they've probably dealt with it.
Wow.
But it goes even deeper than that, taking reports from victims, conducting interviews, even securing crime scenes. And let's not forget that community interaction piece, attending local events, speaking at schools, that kind of thing. They're a really visible part of the community.
Which explains why RoleCatcher puts such a high value on communication and de-escalation skills.
Oh, yeah.
A whopping 86%.
Yeah.
So it's not just about physical strength, right? You've got to know how to talk to people, especially in those high-stress situations.
Exactly. You're often the first point of contact in a crisis. Imagine dealing with people who are terrified, angry, or, dealing with some kind of trauma. Knowing how to de-escalate that, offer a compassionate ear, it's absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
RoleCatcher actually gives some examples of verbal techniques that officers use to calm situations down. I found those really interesting.
Okay, so we've covered the variety of tasks and the surprisingly important, soft skills.
Right.
But let's address the elephant in the room for a sec. This job, well, it isn't all sunshine and community parades. And RoleCatcher definitely doesn't shy away from the tougher realities either.
And rightfully so. This is a high-stakes field. It's often unpredictable, stressful for a reason, You're dealing with people in crisis, potentially dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And it's not a 9-to-5 job. It takes a certain kind of person to handle that kind of pressure.
No kidding. RoleCatcher's pros and cons section definitely doesn't sugarcoat the challenges.
No.
We're talking irregular hours, exposure to danger,
Yeah.
even the emotional toll the job can take. It's all in there.
And it's important to acknowledge those challenges up front. Working nights, weekends, holidays. It takes a toll on your personal life. Not to mention, knowing you might face a dangerous situation at any moment. It requires a certain level of mental and physical preparedness, that's for sure.
It's definitely not a career for the faint of heart.
No.
But for those who are cut out for it, RoleCatcher provides a really insightful roadmap.
Yeah.
Even breaking down how to prepare for, the mental and physical demand.
Right. And it starts with brutal honesty, are you really cut out for this kind of pressure? If the answer is yes, then it's about getting into, top physical condition, of course.
Yeah.
RoleCatcher also dives into the whole formal training aspect, police academy, defensive tactics, mastering firearms.
Right.
They even mention getting certified in CPR and first aid, which I have to admit I hadn't even considered.
It's like they're preparing you for anything.
Right.
Speaking of preparation, one thing that really caught me off guard was the tech angle.
Uh-huh.
RoleCatcher talks about how technology is changing the game for law enforcement.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's way more high-tech than I ever imagined.
Forget the old image of handcuffs and a notepad.
Right.
We're talking body cameras, drones for surveillance, even crime analysis software that uses algorithms to predict, get this, where crimes might happen.
Hold on, crime predicting software. You're not kidding, are you?
Oh.
That's some seriously futuristic stuff.
It's wild, right? They even give an example, this program called PredPol
Okay.
that's already being used in some cities. It analyzes past crime data to identify patterns and predict where future crimes are more likely to occur.
Wow. That's both fascinating and a little unnerving.
I know.
Like, are we sacrificing privacy for safety? It's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
But on a more practical level, what does this tech explosion mean for someone who's actually interested in a law enforcement career?
Well, being tech savvy is a huge asset these days. You don't need to be a coding whiz or anything, but you need to be comfortable using technology.
Right.
Think about it. Officers have to operate those body cameras, understand the data from those drones, even interpret the predictions from the crime analysis software.
It's like being a tech-savvy detective, right?
Well,
Using data as clues.
yeah.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about knowing the law anymore. It's about understanding how tech plays into enforcing it. That's really interesting. But let's shift gears for a second, talk about career progression.
Okay.
RoleCatcher lays out a pretty clear path from rookie to leader.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through, like, the typical trajectory?
Sure. It usually starts with the role of a police officer. Then you might see promotions to detective, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, all the way up to chief of police.
Okay.
Each step comes with more responsibility, leadership roles, and sometimes even specialization.
And speaking of specialization, RoleCatcher gives this example profile of a police officer trainee, and that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
They emphasize continuous learning, which makes sense,
Right.
but it's not something you always associate with a job that requires so much upfront training.
And it's not just about, like, staying up to date on the latest laws or procedures.
Right.
It's about expanding your skill set. Some officers might pursue additional training in areas like cybercrime or hostage negotiation, for example.
That makes sense, especially with technology constantly evolving. You need to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
But let's circle back to something we touched on earlier, the cons listed in RoleCatcher.
Okay.
They specifically mention exposure to dangerous situations as a major downside, which seems like a bit of an understatement.
Well, it's the unavoidable reality of the job, right? And it's something you can't fully prepare for until you're out there in the field.
Right.
One minute you could be writing a parking ticket, and the next you're responding to a potentially life-threatening situation.
That's intense, to say the least.
Yeah.
And it makes those communication and de-escalation skills even more critical.
Absolutely.
It's not just about physical strength. It's about having the mental and emotional capacity to handle those high-pressure moments.
Exactly. RoleCatcher really highlights the importance of staying calm, assessing the situation, and using your training to de-escalate whenever possible. They even provide examples of verbal techniques officers use to kind of diffuse tense situations. It's about using your words as tools, not just your weapon.
So it's not just about being physically strong, but also mentally and emotionally resilient. It takes a unique blend of skills. But it's not just about surviving those dangerous situations. It's about protecting the community. And in today's world, the role of a police officer feels more complex than ever. What does it actually mean to serve and protect in such a diverse and often divided society?
That's a big question, and there's no easy answer, but I think it boils down to upholding the law while also recognizing the humanity of every individual you encounter.
Yeah.
It's about finding that delicate balance between, enforcing the rules and also exercising compassion and understanding.
It's about seeing the person behind the badge, both as an officer and as a member of the community. But how do you even begin to navigate those complexities? Where do aspiring officers even start on that journey?
Well, the first step is understanding the entry requirements. RoleCatcher outlines these pretty clearly. You generally need a high school diploma or equivalent, be at least 21 years old, have a clean driving record. Basic stuff. They're looking for responsible individuals.
Right, because you're dealing with a lot of responsibility from day one. But what about after you meet those basic requirements? What comes next?
Well, then comes the really rigorous part, the background check.
Oh, right.
They're going to dig deep into your past, examining any criminal history, financial records, even your social media activity.
Oh, they really leave no stone unturned, do they?
Nope. They want to make absolutely sure they're hiring someone trustworthy, responsible, and fit to serve in a position of authority. After the background check, there's usually a physical fitness test.
Right, because chasing down suspects requires a certain level of athleticism. What does that test usually involve?
It varies, but generally it assesses your stamina, agility, and overall fitness. They want to make sure you can handle the physical demands of the job, running, jumping, restraining someone if necessary.
It's like a real-life superhero tryout. But physical fitness is only part of the equation. We've talked a lot about the mental and emotional demands of this job. Do they assess those qualities during the application process?
Absolutely. Most law enforcement agencies include a psychological evaluation as part of the process.
Okay.
This might involve interviews with a psychologist, written questionnaires, even personality tests.
So it's about gauging your mental stability, your ability to handle stress, your decision-making skills under pressure.
Right.
They're not just handing out badges to anyone who can pass a fitness test.
Exactly. They're looking at the whole package: physical abilities, mental fortitude, emotional intelligence. And if you make it through all of that, well, that's when the real training begins.
It's like finally getting your acceptance letter to Hogwarts, but instead of magic wands, they hand you, well,
You're right.
RoleCatcher gives the lowdown on Police Academy.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's like boot camp for law enforcement.
So, like, what's involved?
We're talking months of intense training, cramming in everything from like criminal law, investigative procedures to like firearms handling and self-defense tactics. They're preparing you for any situation imaginable.
So you're, like, thrown right into the deep end,
Pretty much.
but in a controlled environment where you can, hopefully learn from your mistakes.
Right. Exactly.
What kind of things are they actually testing you on?
Everything. They'll grill you on legal knowledge, put you through your paces with physical endurance tests.
Yep.
And of course, assess your decision-making in, high-pressure simulations.
Right.
Remember, those split-second calls officers have to make in the field? Well, they're making sure you're ready for that.
Sounds intense.
Yeah.
And I imagine those academy evaluations carry some serious weight. It's not like you can just cram the night before and hope for the best.
You're not kidding. Your performance at the academy can make or break your law enforcement aspirations.
Yeah.
It demonstrates your commitment, your ability to handle stress, to learn quickly. It's a real proving ground.
Right.
And here's the thing, it doesn't stop there. Remember we talked about continuous learning.
Right. It's a career-long commitment. What does that look like after the academy?
Once you've got that badge, the learning takes on a whole new dimension. You might attend workshops on new technologies, pursue specialized certifications in areas like, cybercrime or crisis negotiation. The possibilities are kind of endless.
So you could start as like a rookie officer and end up, say, a hostage negotiator specializing in international cases.
Exactly. Or maybe you become the go-to expert on cybercrime, tracking down hackers. The point is, a career in law enforcement is anything but static. It's constantly evolving, and officers need to evolve with it.
This has been such an eye-opening look at what it really takes to be a police officer.
It really has.
We've gone from like the nitty-gritty of daily tasks
Right?
to the high-tech tools of the trade, and of course the challenges and responsibilities that come with wearing the badge.
And don't forget that constant need to adapt and grow. It's not a job you can just phone in. It demands a lot, but it also offers incredible rewards.
Absolutely. For those of you who feel that call to serve and protect, who are fascinated by like the ever-evolving world of law enforcement, well, RoleCatcher's Career Guide is an amazing place to dive in deeper. Consider this deep dive just the tip of the iceberg.
Couldn't agree more. Do your research, talk to people in the field, and most importantly, ask yourself, do you have the dedication, the empathy, and the resilience to answer this call?
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought. As technology continues to advance at warp speed, what will the future of policing look like? Will we see even more advanced crime prediction, further blurring the lines between like fiction and reality? And how will officers navigate like the ethical dilemmas that these advancements inevitably bring? It's definitely something to think about, especially as you consider a career in this dynamic and ever-changing field.
It's a brave new world out there, and the future of law enforcement is being written as we speak. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, stay curious.